In the early 1900s, homosexual activity in South Africa was seen in many mine workers and was considered to be disgusting and loathsome. Homosexuality was a common occurrence in the gold mines of South Africa during the 1950s and 1960s, and even now. The men interviewed at that time argued that they were heterosexual. They explained that they were isolated from their wives and felt lonely, so they took young boys as their wives. Although these men argued that they turned to homosexuality as a last resort, some chose to extend their stay at mines rather than return home in order to be with their mine wives. In 1996, South Africa became the first country to constitutionally ban discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. In 2002, it became legal for same-sex couples to adopt, and same-sex marriage was legalized later in 2005. Since 2003, transgender South Africans have been able to legally change their gender. Today in South Africa, same-sex relations are legal, legal gender changes are possible, and registration of LGBTQ+ organizations are frequent. South Africa is one of the most progressive countries on LGBTQ+ legal issues, and they have a very vibrant LGBTQ+ social scene. South African LGBTQ activist groups and annual Pride events are held in cities across South Africa. LGBTQ+ representation in pop culture is also very strong and relatively diverse. Many members of the LGBTQ+ community come from across the continent to make their way to South Africa in hopes of living a free and open lifestyle. Hundreds of people who are sexual minorities arrive each year from places such as the Democratic Republic of Congo, Nigeria, and Sudan. One man reports that South Africa offers a sanctuary, a place to live and love, and an almost imaginable freedom.
Disabo Gift Macau was murdered in an unspeakably brutal manner yards from her home. Most believe her sexual orientation was the motive, and so communities have come from across the country in a mass show of solidarity.
In your mind, oh, give it time, and all will be fine. Today you're down, comes tomorrow. Chances of rising again seems hollow.
Outright International reports that although South Africa is very progressive with LGBTQ+ rights, there is shocking violence and murders of LGBTQ+ people, as well as harassment and bullying in public services such as education and healthcare, and this continues to be staggering. Local activists highlight that police response is often low to these types of calls as well. A recent survey of more than 2,000 LGBTQ+ people by OUT, a South African rights organization, found that within a 2-year period, 39% had been verbally assaulted, 20% had been threatened with harm, and 17% chased or followed, and nearly 10% physically attacked.
According to Helen Wells and Louise Polders, authors of the journal article entitled Anti-Gay Hate Crimes in South Africa, there is no separate crime register kept to record hate crime statistics. Therefore, hate crimes based on sexual orientation remain obscured by the broader crime statistics. For example, in Uganda, a newspaper on October 2nd published a front-page story outing 100 Ugandans who the newspaper identified as gay or lesbian and whose photographs were carried alongside the headline, "Hang Them." So what is South Africa doing to change this? In 2011, the Justice Ministry established a task force to tackle the phenomenon of collective rape, routinely given to lesbian women and trans men to cure them of homosexuality.
I cannot live my life in isolation. I choose to speak out. I choose to voice out. I choose to claim my space. It's not easy. It's not easy. I've been threatened. Everywhere I go with my partner, it's always an issue.
In addition to the task force, Cape Town, South Africa is also home to the Masjid Ul Imam Mosque. This mosque is not like any others due to its colorful prayer mats arranged in a rainbow pattern. Inside, you will find a softly spoken man in his late 20s that sits between a gay imam from Zambia, a straight sheikh from Liberia, and opposite a lesbian student from Ghana. It is the only African country to have legalized gay marriage. This modest-sized building is home to Africa's first and most public LGBT-friendly mosque. South Africa is also home to many activists. For example, Busi Keswa is the director of the Forum for the Empowerment of Women, also known as FEW. This group has been instrumental in the protection against hate crimes, more specifically collective rapes against women, which often go unpunished and happen routinely in South Africa. Another activist is Ayanda Denge. She was a South African trans woman and sex trafficking survivor. She is an advocate for transgender people, sex trafficking survivors, and for the abolishment of prostitution. She was the chairman of the Sex Workers Education and Advocacy Task Force. Denge has also said that being transgender is a triple dose of stigmatization and discrimination.
Sex workers come from all walks of life: women, men, transgender, mothers, grandmothers, the rich, and the poor, from another country or living next door. Some do it due to lack of opportunity, and for others, it's just a job. But there is one thing they all have in common: they're vulnerable. You see, many of us dismiss what sex workers do as immoral or illegal. They face stigma from friends and family, violence at the hands of clients, pimps, and even the police. And they have no chance to find justice or access to basic healthcare. So sex work goes underground, in secret, a breeding ground for abuse, addiction, unplanned pregnancy, and HIV. So what can be done? To start, decriminalization would give sex workers better access to justice and protection from their abusers. Educational support would provide safe spaces for sex workers to learn their rights and share their stories. And better access to healthcare would help prevent unwanted pregnancies and turn the tide against HIV. The sex trade is here to stay. Together, we can help improve the well-being of some of the most vulnerable amongst us. The Sex Workers Education and Advocacy Task Force is championing the rights of sex workers throughout South Africa. Learn more about the challenges they face at sweat.org.za.
The World Economic Forum reports that 5 ways that might help the LGBTQ+ community have more equality include active citizenship, which means that more gay people need to be represented in leadership positions, not just for LGBTQ+ issues, but for all social issues affecting the country. The education system needs a life orientation curriculum in South African schools, which currently do not include life experience curriculums. There are online platforms that seek to supplement the life orientation curriculum, and these are just one example of how to use technology in order to engage with students across the country on topics that they might not have access to in the classroom. The third way is through media. Art and media should show more gay, lesbian, and trans characters in situations that LGBTQ+ members often find themselves in, doing things they do, suffering, fighting, dreaming, and living. The fourth way is through business. The South African Workplace Equality Index, which seeks to benchmark and recognize the employers that are most inclusive towards lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender employees in South Africa, uses this index as a way to change attitudes in the workplace and encourage wider positive change. The final way is through advocacy and action. The LGBTQ+ community in South Africa is a community that still needs to be properly supported and properly positioned. This support, together with vocalizing advocacy for the rest of the continent, has the potential to change the narrative for all Africans.